Hello, beautiful light-filled souls. I am going to share with you an interview from the last summit in 2021, and it is with Raphaelle and Michael Tamura. They have a show which you should definitely check out. It's amazing, called Living the Miracle with Michael and Raphaelle Tamura. I enjoyed that conversation so much, but before I get to that, I want to remind you that I do have a writers group that meets in November. At the end of November, we meet once a month. I have an intuitive writing group where we talk about writing strategies as well as using intuition to connect with source when writing. For those who are interested in my spiritual community, we meet twice a month, and I do offer some readings. I'm willing to work with different time zones. So if you don't see something that works for you, just email me and let me know. But may you be blessed, and please do enjoy this interview. But I also want to just formally introduce the two of you. So I was pleased to be on your show, and I had so much fun. And when I was on that show, I knew I had to talk to both of you again because you both have such wonderful energy. But Michael Tamura lives the miracle, spiritually aware from childhood. He sees everyone the way they are as immortal souls to guide thousands to their healing, awakening, and their true life purpose. And he draws from years of intensive training, past life recall, nightly out-of-body sojourns, 4 decades of teaching and giving clairvoyant counseling, and a lifetime of extraordinary experiences, including having 5 near-death experiences. We'll have to ask some questions about those. He's an award-winning author of the book, You Are the Answer, Discovering and Fulfilling Your Soul's Purpose, and is writing another book. And so both Michael and Tamara are on the Empowerment Channel, Voice of America. And so you can listen to their wonderful show, but welcome, Michael.
Thank you, thank you.
And then welcome, Raphaelle. For 37 years, Raphaelle Tamura, a renowned clairvoyant and spiritual healer and teacher, has been helping clients throughout the world. Along with her ongoing practice with individual clients, she has been teaching spirituality, metaphysically oriented classes through teleseminars, retreat, weekend seminars with her husband. Also a well-known and beloved teacher and author of You Are the Answer, Raphaelle is a co-founder and COO of Seraphim at Mount Shasta, which she runs with her husband. She is also an aspiring author with 3 books working on and hopes to publish in the future. One has a working title of The Golden Collar, a true story about how her own dog Shanti has returned to her 3 times in her current lifetime. And I can't wait to talk with you about that.
I can't wait either. Well, thank you.
Sounds like we keep on coming back, you know, one way or the other.
I know. So let's begin with that. 5 near-death experiences. Why 5?
Well, I think 5 is enough.
That's what I keep saying.
Yes, if I do it again, Raphaelle's going to kill me. Well, some of us are slow learners, right?
Oh, I don't believe that. I think you're just going back for more and more wisdom.
Well, yes, because, you know, it's interesting. So many people I've talked to who have had near-death experiences, you know, they died and came back. And to many of them, that was their real wake-up call. It was their first experience of really being spirit and immortal and limitless and all of that. But in my case, I've been experiencing that all my life. And in fact, when you introduced me and I was listening to 4 decades of doing this, and I realized, oh, I just had my 68th birthday. So this it's going on 2 years short of 5 decades.
Wow.
I'm getting old. You know, I'm from the Jurassic era. And so being, having this experience of my body, the heart stopping and stop breathing, and I'm keeled over on a physical level, well, it just confirmed everything for me. It's everything that I've always experienced, but it still has definitely a profound effect, because when I come back, Well, one of the things I learned is it's very inexpensive to die, but it's very expensive to come back. It almost
kidding.
bankrupted us.
Oh, I
Several
know.
times.
Yeah, that's something we've never talked about. Yeah, I had to file bankruptcy after my
Yep.
first,
Yes.
hospital stay.
Even for that reason, I wouldn't recommend having 5 near-death experiences.
Wow.
But in other ways, coming back is what's difficult because that's the learning process. A lot of people are very interested in hearing about, wow, what was it like being on, quote, the other side? But the important part isn't so much that, it's, okay, what is it like coming back? And why do I say that dying is a piece of cake? Coming back is the challenge. It's difficult to be here. That's, I think, across the board for everyone. And so what makes it difficult for us to be here, especially after we've been, on the other side, experiencing spirit, being who we really are, is it feels like, this place is too small to accommodate who we are.
Yeah.
That's the beginning challenge of every soul incarnating here in this world. This is a world, it's a divided world. Everything here is made up of plus and minus, male and female, positive, negative, all of the dichotomies, polarity. Whereas spirit, there is no dividedness. It's undivided, it's limitless, it's eternal. There's no beginning or ending, there's no change, it's just is. So how do we, as spirit, immortal and eternal, come into this body experience here in this world where everything is divided and defined primarily by time and space? That which we know instantly in spirit takes us years to unfold. and in my book, even, there's an experience I had where in an instant, I knew all of it. I had the entire experience, but it took me 9 years to even be able to start to put it into words, because words are one after the other. It's in a linear sequence. But the experience isn't like that. So then from the very beginning, so-called, of our life here in the world, we're dealing with time and space. We're dealing with division. We're dealing with this belief of separation, that I'm this particular person and you're this particular person, and that person has got a different name and is a particular person. And it seems like that, but it's not. Once you have an experience of spirit in any way, shape, or form, you know what everybody says: oh, spirit is one. God is oneness. But from an intellectual viewpoint, oneness doesn't mean anything, because it's an idea. It's just the minute a person says, oh, yes, we're all one, except for those people over there. We're in a divided world. So I love that story of when Joseph and Mary was pregnant with Jesus, to be, and they're going down to have their census counted, right? And they couldn't find a Motel 6 even. So that whole thing, in one little phrase, there's no room at the inn. To me, what that means, this is the nature of this world. There is no space in this world of division and time and space and everything kind of unfolding on a linear level for spirit to be, until we make it. So our first job, our major job here as spiritual beings, is to arrive and say, okay, here I am. I need to make a home for myself. temporary, I need to make some space for myself to be the limitless, eternal, creative being that I am. Okay, that's the challenge.
And how did you do that?
Doing it every day. and the thing that I notice, people who are even aware of that have a difficult time, is they forget part of being the spirit being that they are is they're not only creative. If you're creative all the time. And if you're creative all the time, you have to have, here in this place of time and space, you have to have a space to express your creativity. Otherwise, you can't be here. You're all bottled up, in a sense. So, and what in my experience, working with a lot of people, is most of the pain, especially the heartache type of pain that human beings all experience to varying degrees, most of it has nothing to do with physical pain or injury. It has to do with each person not being able to create enough space here in this world of dimensions for themselves to fully be, because they're not making space for them to create, to express their creativity all the time. We're creating and expressing our creativity all the time, but if we don't give it space, we're all bottled up. And that's power. Creativity is power, and that gets bottled up, it's gonna hurt, and it can kill us.
So
literally.
What's a tip to help people expand more into their creativity?
Well, what's the first most important and biggest part of all creating is imagination. Yeah. And imagination, unfortunately, in this world, so many people assume, I think almost every child gets it from somewhere. If they don't get it from their parents, they get it from a school teacher or some adult. And somebody will sooner or later come to them and say, oh, no, that's not real. It's just your imagination. And so then pretty much everybody starts to believe there's a thing called imagination and there's a thing called reality. Again, in this world, everything seems to be two different things. So, and then in this world, because it's divided, people, if they become beholden to this world and the ways of this world, people start to think in terms of the dichotomy, and the ego just jumps in every time and tries to make it either or. Everything's about either. Are you going to stay or are you going to leave? Are you going to die or are you going to live? Are you going to do this or are you Democrat or Republican? Whatever it is.
And it's kind of a logical fallacy. It's kind of a logical fallacy when you break it
is. When you think about it, it makes sense. That's why I don't think about it. In spirit, you don't think. It's you experience, right? Everything is there. So how do we give ourselves as a spiritual being that platform, the space to express our creativity all the time that we're already expressing? It's not what are we going to express, it's if we're here, we're already expressing ourselves. And that's what shows up for us who are clairvoyant. It shows up as people's auras. They could be the quietest, meekest, shyest person in the world, and they're just going, bah. Here I am, and this is where I'm at, and this is where I'm going, and this is what I'm creating, and a whole bit. It's all there. But the person who doesn't give themselves the space to have that, pain, right? Invalidation and unhappiness. Well, the imagination is, everything is imagined. Even if you kind of think about it, like the whole world, the chair I'm sitting on, somebody imagined it first. Then somebody else usually had to imagine, well, how are we going to build this thing you imagined? And then somebody else goes, okay, I know how to build it, but I need the supplies. And how do you make metal? How do you make plastic? How do you make, the leather? And just on and on. Everything at least starts with imagination before we could make it relatively usable here. So there's nothing, there's the definition of, is it imagination or is it reality, is a lie. It's not true. It's all imagination. The only difference is, by the nature of imagination, we use it all the time. Every moment of our day, we're imagining. We can't think if we don't imagine it. We can't remember if we can't imagine it. But most people don't realize, what they're really dealing with is the making of images and the seeing of images in their mind and understanding it. All of that is imagination. So imagination is not real. But we can have the choice to put imagination forth and share it with others in this relative world, or decide, that was fun to imagine it, but I don't want to bring it forth. So I'm just going to blow it up, let it go. Gone. We could imagine things to be, we could imagine things not to be. But both is still imagination. Creating is imagination, destroying is imagination. So once we start to reclaim our ability to imagine, now that's the first big step in being able to imagine the space for us to be here as the true spiritual being that we are.
I'm going to ask both of you this next question, which kind of ties in from previous interviews. When people are in deep pain or deep grief, what do you do to help them shift back into that imaginative state and that beauty? Or how do you use what you know to help people in those states where they can't even imagine because they're in so much pain or grief?
Yes. Raphaelle, you want to go first?
You can go. Go ahead. I'll let you do it all. I'll have my piece.
Well, for grief, what precipitates our experience of grief is loss. I lost something or someone incredibly important to me, someone I truly love. I lost this, I lost that, I lost the job, career of my dreams, whatever it is you have. When you have this experience of a loss, then you experience this intense emotion we call grief. Okay. When that grief comes on, well, the first thing is the grief has a history. It's cumulative. So let's say, a person believes, this person died that I so loved and depended upon. That person is gone forever. It's a big loss. But the grief that person will experience isn't just because of the loss of that person. They probably lost other things before that were important too, all the way back. And then before that, other lifetimes worth of losses. So every single one of us, if you're a human being, you've experienced loss. And over time, some really big losses. And if we don't attend to the grief, which means attend to that belief in loss, then we're going to stay in that grief, and it seems interminable, and there's nothing we can do about it because what we lost is all gone and it's gone forever. Is that true? No. So everybody knows that saying, the adage, truth shall set you free. That's what I go with right from the beginning is, wait a minute, is this true? I'm sure a lot of the people tuning into summit probably have had at least one experience of becoming lucid while they're dreaming during their sleep. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it's becoming lucid during your nighttime sleep dreaming is you become aware that you're still dreaming, but you become aware that, oh, this isn't reality. This isn't really happening to me. I'm not going through this as reality. This is just a dream. And anyone who's ever had that experience, it's total joy, total free. Instantly, you're free. Oh, okay. Yeah, shoot me. I don't care. It's not going to hurt me. I can jump off of a tall building, leap over everything. I can teleport anything I want to do. It's a dream. And I'm the one who's dreaming it. So it's a joyful, freeing experience. It's called waking up. Even though you're still dreaming, you're waking up within the dream. And that's what we're doing here in this world, is waking up within this dreaming. Works the same way. And when we do, we realize, oh, okay, I'm not going to die. This is great. And then when we wake up, it's seeing the truth is it true that this person I so love is gone forever? That there's no communication, there's no reality to their existence? That's not true. And now more than ever, there's near-death experiencers who are coming back and saying, hey, guess what? You couldn't get rid of me. And then there's many great mediums out there relaying the messages from spirit and says, no, they're just laughing at you. And so more and more there's stuff that people could look to and go, yeah, well, maybe I really believe this was it, but everybody else seems to, more and more people seem to say life goes on. So maybe I'm not, this isn't the truth. It breaks open.
The near-death experience itself seemed to have that shift where it's like, oh, this is just a stage. This isn't the reality. I mean, there was that shift in the spirit world where I was like, wow, I took this all too seriously.
Yeah. And a lot of people have asked me, how come you laugh all the time? It's because it's funny. And this is from way before,
Exactly.
way before I ever keeled over physically and died. It's because I've always experienced spirit, at least to a certain degree. And from that space, none of this is really real. It's spirit is so much more real. This is just like a dream. And the more you start to become lucid, aware in this dream, you start to see things for the way they truly are, the truth of it, instead of falling for the illusion of what it appears like. It smells like this and tastes like that, and so it must be this, but it's not. It's like a magic trick.
And I am going to ask Raphaelle to weigh in on how do you help people who are in grief or struggling to have that spiritual connection?
Well, in a number of different ways, because for one thing, I'm a clairvoyant and people come to me for readings and healing and so on. And oftentimes people come to me with, someone who has passed over, or since they know I'm a great animal lover, the loss of a pet can be just as devastating as the loss of a person in our life. And, there's a lot of people that poo-poo that, but I understand because of my love for animals and what it's felt like to me when I've lost them. And then there comes a little history here of my time. I've been with Michael for 34 years. We just had our 30th wedding anniversary this very month.
Oh, I saw that on one of the social media profiles. So cool. Congrats.
Yeah, we've been together a long time. He has 2 sons by his first marriage, and I adore them, both boys. But with having gone through with Michael through all of his near-death experiences, that was really helpful to me on, what not to do and what to do. And also being a clairvoyant and a healer, being able to experience it as a spiritual experience. One of the things I've noticed for people who come to me with, I'm devastated about the death of this person, is there's always this space of opening that they have that connects them more with spirit. And if they can pull themselves out of the grief even just a little bit, they get to have that downpouring of energy. It's a little more difficult these days when in the hospital, sometimes they'll push the family out, when the person is in his or her last moments. And this is an important time for the family because they get to experience that being leaving and having the reality of that. It's not just the body stopping. There's something else going on here. And the same goes for when a baby is born, that veil is pierced as that being is coming all the way in, and there's that downpouring of energy for days after the birth. And so what I try to do to help people is to show them the very thing that even Sylvia, the lady before us, was talking about. We all come from the same place, and there's really no difference in who we are when we drop the body, except there's no body. So people in bodies who are programmed not to see, or who haven't developed their clairvoyance or whatnot, can't really see that and don't always experience it. And I've had so many experiences with this, but working with Michael and his death experiences was quite a thing for me. It was actually his second near-death experience. His first one was he had a near-death experience with gout. And I wasn't even home when that happened. And it was, the gout was really bad because he had it all over his body, but he was able to recover from that without going to a hospital. The second near-death experience, he had a heart attack while he was in our house. And there's this whole, it's quite a story from my viewpoint anyway, about all the things that happened like the night before. And I had something happen, which was instructions on what I was to do when this actually happened, but I didn't know at the time it was instructions. So when Michael had his heart attack, and it took me 4 hours before I could convince him to go to the hospital, in which case he could have been dead. And a lot of people have yelled at me for not calling 911 right away, but I was told by Michael, don't call anybody yet. And I ended up driving him to the hospital. But what was really difficult was the 3 years that followed, the recovery. Michael said the thing about expensive and all that. The money part was very difficult in all the experiences, the three major ones. The two minor ones didn't cost us as much, but the three major ones cost us a lot. Especially the two of them. The second one was really big. So it took him 3 years to recover. And I actually was going through almost like what someone goes through when they've actually lost the person. And it was so much grief and so much, I kind of got mad at God. Here I've spent my whole life since I was 30 years old, helping people, working with spirit, loving spirit, being really connected with spirit. And I had a day when I just fisted my hand at God and said, what the heck are you doing? Why are you doing this? And of course, I was being a total victim about it at the time. And I ran into a neighbor who recommended a book, and I read that book, and it led me to another book, which really helped me get through it. And I had been, I was at that place in my life where, when was that, Michael? Your first heart attack? About 2006.
2006, yeah.
It was quite a number of years ago. By that time, I've been a clairvoyant since 1982. So this is a long haul, right? Working with spirit in a certain way, and suddenly I get to have my big challenge with it this way. And this is where I started to become aware of the illusion. And the illusion of this whole thing, just like, I used to practice, and I still do sometimes, lucid dreaming is a lot of fun. You go into your night dreams and you just become awake, and you can do whatever you want. And what I like to do is go and give healings and help people as much as possible. And, you know, Trisha, you talk about in your book about having sex with 3 different celebrities. I thought that was
But
funny.
I did spread love and
Yeah.
to everyone.
That was great. But, you know, I've strengthened over the period of time, I've strengthened my abilities when I go to sleep at night and being able to help people. If I say, for instance, if somebody contacts me and they can't afford a reading, well, sometimes I can arrange, you know, payments or whatever. But even if that's out of the question, I'll say, okay, I'll work with you on the astral and see what we can do. So being able to go through the barriers that say, you know, you can't do anything out there, you just, you know, there's nothing, it's just dreams or whatever. I pretend like it's real and I go do the work, and I sometimes remember it in the morning and sometimes I don't. But when I was trying to bring that lucidity into my present physical life in the body, you know, it was very difficult at first when Michael was going 3 years, you know, that's 12-month periods of time where he was just not doing well. We could barely work, and, you know, we had the financial thing and we're running businesses and everything. But what I found was the book that helped me was Gary Renard's Disappearance of the Universe, which led me to A Course in Miracles, which taught me a different level of forgiveness that I've never had learned before. You know, we teach this method called blowing a picture. You know, if you have something that really troubles you in your mind, you take that picture, you put it in an imaginary rose, explode that rose, and you let it go. And I've always considered that forgiveness, and I've always considered myself a forgiving person. But when I got that mad about going through this, it was one day I was walking my dog and I just put my fist in the air, and then I got an immediate answer with this book. And it took me a year or 2 before I really got myself through the entire Course in Miracles. But what it did was it helped me to detach from this being real, from all this being, you know, everything I'm touching and all that kind of stuff, this is all real. Well, it's relatively real, as Michael was talking about. We experience it as part of what we're doing here. I've always known that this is a school for learning, and we're all learning at different levels. And when you get to a certain part of your spiritual growth, suddenly you're going to be challenged with something that's going to make you look some more. And in practicing this, it's an internal forgiveness. You know, you have to go inside. It's not blaming anyone for anything. I was blaming God that one day with my mean fist. And, you know, I didn't like the blame game anyway. So of course I took that all back with it by the time I got home with my dog. But the shift in my space was being able to detach from the drama of everything. And so when drama starts to happen in my universe, I like to be the grounded, calm person that can, you know, create a solution to it if I can, and staying away from it if I can't, you know, giving it space, you know. So helping someone in grief is first giving that person space to be and letting grief be okay. But also explaining to them that if you're in grief too long, you're going to start holding that other soul down into this plane too long. And, you know, I liked what Sylvie said about talking, I think that was her speaking about grabbing onto her dad, and he's finally saying, don't grab onto me. It's your time now. Get into your own power. That's what I see all the time. The soul that passes over says, oh, I'm okay. Even cats and dogs will do that. I'm okay. So
Yes. So tell me more about that, contacting animal spirits, and the fascinating story of your dog returning to you.
well, Shanti was actually the 3rd time, and she passed over in 2017 at 14 and a half years. And I am writing a book about this. I'm writing it as a fictional story so that I can show what the heavenly planes are like as well. But my first experience with a dog in this sense, well, actually first and second, when my first dog died, Michael and I weren't together yet, but we were involved in the same organization. And my dog, for the last year of her life, I had to give her to my ex-husband. And she came to me in spirit and said, I'm going now. Could you take me over? Which I did. And I called my ex-husband the next day and I said, did Raya die last night? And he goes, well, how did you know? Well, I've been telling you for all the years we were together. I'm psychic. You know? So that was such a beautiful experience because basically she came to me dead, like a dead dog. And I'm holding her and I'm at at the stairway of this very Greek kind of building with the columns. It was white. It was like the Parthenon, you know, but it was brand new. It wasn't ruins or anything. And there's a doctor-like character with pens in his pocket wanting to take her. And I was handing her to him. And I said, please advance this soul. She was a really, really great dog. And he just said, hand her over. And he took her, and that was the end of my dream. So, of course, be careful what you pray for, because the next time she came back was as an Akita dog, which is a dog the breed is from Japan. And they are a very strong-willed dog, much more than German Shepherds and other kinds of dogs. And there's the whole section in the book that's going to explain about Akitas. But we had her for 8 short years. And one time when I was having trouble with her, she actually came to me in a dream as the other dog, as Raya. She said, this is how I can communicate with you. But when she died suddenly when Michael and I were traveling, and she had been in kennel. There's this wonderful kennel in Parker, Colorado, where we were living at the time. And that's huge. And she just passed away overnight there. And I knew she had died the morning I woke up, and we were at Michael's dad's house at the time. And I was so grief-stricken by this. I didn't think I would ever get over it. It was like, I had been told when I dropped her off that something was up. And I was actually told to pull my car back in and to pray for both my animals, because we also had a cat at the time that I had dropped off. And so I prayed for their well-being and everything. And of course, you know, she still passed while we were away. And I had even been telling Michael for days, we've been gone too long, we need to go back. So she passed away, and we went through about a 6-week period of time where I was just devastated by this thing. And I finally got a dream about her, and it was so beautiful. The dream was, I'm sitting on this wood bench, and I'm surrounded by high hedges that's like a semicircle around me with an opening. And this monk comes with Aiko. Aiko was her name, the Akita. And she looks so amazing. She was a very powerful 83-pound dog, you know, built like a football player. But when he brought her around, she looked like this brilliant energy. She looked like herself, but you could kind of see through her. And her heart was this white, hot heart with rays going out into eternity. And she came around, she was brought around to me, and she was allowed to come to me without a leash. We could never, ever let that dog off leash. She was kind of a dangerous dog. And she came to me and just stood in front of me. And what I saw was, how could I grieve when I could see she was so full of joy? She was so happy, and she was being taken care of. And I understood why it was a monk that brought her, because I had raised her on a book written by the monks of New Skeet in New York. There's a book they have about how to raise dogs, and their dogs are German Shepherds. But I had used that book to raise her. So she was being caretaken by one of these monks. So then when I woke up, I started feeling better. And then that day, I was driving my car. I was following Michael in our cars to take our cars to be serviced. And I burst into tears again, just like I was doing, you know, off and on. And I called up Michael on the phone and said, go take your car. I'll be there in a few minutes. I pulled over, and what I did was I used my tools, and I went, okay, why am I crying? Why am I crying so much? And now that I know she's okay, and I got, because you're looking at those pictures, those mental pictures that say, I should have done that. I could have done that. I woulda, coulda, shoulda is what I call them. The woulda, coulda, shoulda pictures, the guilt pictures, the things that I wanted to do with her and we never got to. These are the things that even people who lose people get stuck on. And so it was just a matter of blowing a few of those pictures, and I completely stopped grieving. It was like magic. I didn't have to run my guilt about someone else's death. And the one thing I notice very, very much when somebody dies in somebody's life, doesn't matter how, third person it is the sister-in-law of the brother-in-law of my cousin or whatever. Everybody's ego wants to find a way to blame yourself for that person's death. That's one thing, is I could have done more, especially when the death is a suicide. And, sometimes with the suicide death, it is a lesson, but it is not a lesson that's meant to punish a person. It's just a lesson. It's part of our life lessons. We hope we can help someone not to commit suicide. I remember John Edwards once calling suicide helping yourself out of your own life, which I thought was a nice attitude. But, suicide is always difficult no matter which way you want to look at it. But natural death is difficult in a way, no matter how we die, it is a form of suicide that is just letting go of and abandoning the body in a sense, because we're ready to take a next step. So, if you look at it that way, you have to give that person the choice to leave if they want to, right? And of course, with suicide people, let's get them counseling and let's get them help so that they can see the nature of their own lessons. So, but with helping people is getting them to work psychically with the energy of what they're stuck on about why they can't let that person go, as well as what Michael was talking about is I've always seen when people grieve, all loss comes up, like throw up. But it's not an easy process, and it helps to laugh once in a while or surround yourself with loved ones who can just love you up until you kind of have your grounding again. And there's another part of it too, is if it's somebody really close, like a husband or a sister, or somebody that your mother, that someone you're really close to, a lot of times that soul wants to follow that person out. And when you're out of the body and not tending to the body's going to not do well and, not handle anything well. And the other part is if you are helping someone who is grieving, try not to invade their space too much. You can give them a hug, and if they need it, or the long hugs, as I've seen a lot of times when people pass, but don't put all your grief into that person and sympathy, because it's just going to make it worse. These are some of the things that I've learned over the years.
Yeah, beautifully said. And thank you for writing about your experience with your dog, because you commented on my puppies that I recently acquired. And I had the strangest moment with one of the puppies. He looked at me and I remembered him from another life. It was just one of those moments. I was like, oh my God, it was my dog in another lifetime. This is so wild. But yeah, what a magical place this world is. And on that note, I want to ask you both about, you did a series and I caught some of it on angels and really loved that. So I get questions about this. I'm sure you do too. How do you work with the angelic realm?
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, it's for me, it seems more they work with me. I kind of picture them sitting around a card table and, okay, all right, pick a stick, you know, who got the short stick? We're gonna send you down to Michael. But angels are great because they're what would you say? There's nothing in an angel that's not of God. It's not of spirit. So angels don't live in that dichotomy, the division of this or that or either or. They're all inclusive. Spirit is always inclusive. So the only thing that's the most important part of my relationship with angels is all I have to do is say hello in my mind, in spirit, and then I just have the instant experience of that angel. And if I were off course or something like that, it's very easy to go, oh yeah, I forgot all about this, or you know, they're reminders, by not because they come and remind you, but because the minute you put your attention on them, you're reminded of what truth is, what reality is, what spirit is. And so that's on a all the time basis. And then sometimes they'll have one of them or several of them. Well, in my second near-death experience, when I was in the back of an ambulance, and I was still going through that 4.5 hour heart attack. And that's after I was at one ER and had a great time, by the way, even though Raphaelle was having a horrible time in the other side of that room. I was just having a complete experience of just everything is under a divine orchestration, choreography. Nothing can, I mean, it doesn't matter what's going to happen. Nothing can go wrong. And so I was having a great time, and I can see where the doctor wasn't having a great time in her conscious awareness, but she was being totally supported by angels and healing guides and everybody. Everyone was in this dance. And so I said, I'll sign whatever. That's not going to matter. It's all good. But on the way going, there was a too small of a city hospital to take care of the extent of my condition. So she had to call a bigger city hospital that's over the mountain range. And I had an 1.5 hour ambulance ride to this other hospital. In the middle of it, I'm being attended to in the back by a guy who looked like he was a sophomore in high school at the most. So I asked him, hey, how long have you had your paramedic's license? And he goes, oh, next week I'm going to take my finals.
Oh, no.
But Raphaelle and I have this experience. We always get the newbie on the job. We always get the trainee, you know, and the reason for it is the same reason that Raphaelle said she was, you know, shaking her fist at God and blaming God for a moment. If you're going to blame anybody, God's a good one to blame, because God could take it. God's not gonna take it seriously of, oh God, did I really do that to you? You know, there's no guilt or anything like that. And any kind of hostility, blame just goes away because it's not real. And so then when I got out of the body, right after, of course, I was trying to console the young paramedic who's doing a great job, but he sweat that, you know, he doesn't want to lose me on his shift. It's not going to look good on his resume either, first person. And so I'm saying, hey guy, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm not going to croak on you. Of course, as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I flatlined.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, but I don't care. I'm going out, and I'm going out of the ambulance and everything. And I met with, and along the way, I see Raphaelle's doing her, you know, shaking her fist, not at God that time. She's shaking her fist at me. This is one of the great things of being married to another clairvoyant.
I was in the car behind him.
Yeah,
Oh
she's
no.
just white knuckling driving to keep up with the ambulance on these curvy mountain roads, and uh, and then she sees me, and where I'm at, there's no death. So I mean, I'm going, oh hey Raphaelle, nice to see you, kind of a thing, and I see her looking at me, and she's got a different reaction because she's in the body. And what does it mean if she sees me as spirit leaving the ambulance? Okay, he's trying to get out of here. So she's shaking her head fist at me, and I'm just making up stories in my mind of, oh yeah, I'll have to tell her, I came back because I was so scared you're going to kill me if I didn't. So anyway, once I pass through that space, I'm in a different celestial arena, and there's 5 golden, amazing beings, angels, waiting for me. And as I start to rise up toward them, one of them comes down and turns into, from this golden being to this woman, this angel, just very angelic looking, total compassion. I just absolutely adored her. And she comes and she puts her hands on my chest of the astral body and just says, like, naughty, naughty, it's not your time. Yeah, not yet. She said, not yet. And then she starts pushing me back toward the ambulance in my body. And so she guides me all the way back through the roof of the ambulance, back into my body. And as soon as I got back into the body, boom, the heart starts up again. And the poor paramedic is holding his paddles, about to shock me back, and he didn't have to. So it was a very short time I was gone. And but he was really happy that he didn't have to defibrillate me. But that was an example of a face-to-face kind of a experience with an amazing angel. And then, of course, in fact, in 2 other of my death experiences, the first one and the third one, I was escorted out of my body by archangels. Some people call them Archangel Michael. And total, like a limo service.
Nice.
Way better than Uber. So that's another way of experiencing angels too. And on a daily basis, they're always there. And and they help me when I ask for it. They'll help me maintain a sanctuary. So if I'm going to be teaching in a hotel conference room, and I always work the energy there and clean it up and reset the whole energy. And we were talking about how do you make space for yourself to be here? How do you make space for others to be here? In the sense of dealing with people who are grief-stricken, that's the key, is if they have the space to be who they really are, then that grief, they still could go through grief, but it's not going to be the kind that gets them frozen and stuck for a long time. It's just a passing thing. Oh yeah, okay. Because they know who they are. That's been my experiences. There's been times where all I have to do is walk into a building, and the first person I see, and I say hello to them, and that person just falls apart and starts bawling their eyeballs out. And I'm going, okay, because they were looking for somebody to see who they were. That's the thing about making space for someone, is the same as making space for yourself, is awareness. Awareness is what does it. When you become aware of who someone truly is, that person starts to, you give them space. It's not like you're giving them something or doing something to them. You're just opening up the space for them to be here in this world. And that's the thing Raphaelle's talking about, where, you have compassion and you're hugging somebody and just saying, hey, it's okay. It's not just the saying, okay, and it's nice, and rubbing them on the back or hugging them or something, but as you do that, the thing that makes the difference, all the difference, is if you're aware of who this person really is. They're not the body, they're this incredible, beautiful, powerful, creative light of beingness. And when you see that, the more you see that, the more space that person has to really be themselves, to express themselves here as who they are, as a limitless, eternal being and creative. Oh, they're going to pop out of being in grief because, oh, who they are is not in grief. Who they are can't lose anything. We as spiritual beings cannot lose anything. It's just not possible. Limitlessness has nothing to lose. So just recognizing the truth of that everything starts to heal. And so that's, and on the more technical part, mechanical part, when Raphaelle's talking about the creating an image of a rose and putting our grief, our guilt thoughts and everything in it and exploding it, imagining it, that's the whole thing explodes in a flash of light. What that is forgiveness, because forgiveness is the minute we recognize truth. It's not a process. The minute we recognize truth, there's nothing to forgive. It's gone. The thing we were holding on to, the anger, the blame, the guilt, frustration, whatever that we were holding on to, disappears because it wasn't true. But until then, boy, you can't convince me, that it's not true, because like Raphaelle was saying, it's so intense. But what makes our experience of anything, whether it's anger or grief or anything else, so intense that it seems to be more powerful than we are? It's taking over. That's our energy. That's our own power. The more we resist something, the more we imbue it with our life force and our power and creativity, and we make it bigger than life. Then I'm this little person, and my grief is Godzilla, and it's going to take, step on me, and I don't think I can handle it. No, we can't ever do anything that we can't handle. Mm-hmm. The only time when we truly experience, I'm not handling this problem, is because we're trying to handle or solve someone else's problem. And someone else's problem, you could be the most powerful person on the planet, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't solve it. You didn't create it. But anything we create, there's nothing we're not going to be able to manage well. So.
Wise words. Raphaelle, any final thoughts you want to add on connecting with angels and feeling them?
Well, angels are great. I've always enjoyed working with angels. I was even named after one. I didn't name myself. I was given this name at birth with the spelling that you're seeing on the screen. That's the way my parents spelled it. And actually, Raphaelle is my middle name originally, and I dropped my first name because it confused people. But I've always loved the angels, and it's great because there was a time when angels, the whole angel thing, I think it was in the 80s, was really, really popular. And so children knew my name and everything like that. And then, then the Ninja Turtles came along, and some of the Ninja Turtles had angel names too, like Raphaelle. But as a person who was raised in a religious upbringing, and I kind of rejected the religion, but there were a couple things I didn't. One was angels, and the other was that Jesus was a really special person, and I really understand, who he really is, from what I've learned as a spiritual seeker. But with angels, the way I see angels is they help us not to kill ourselves before we're supposed to go. That's one of the ways they help us. So they can actually come in as just the, the voice of guidance when we're about to, get in an accident or something like that, that's not karmically something we need to experience. They're really good about that. Some people might think that that's just a spirit guide, but a lot of times it's the angels that come to help us with that. I often call in the angels, for instance, when I have a reading that I'm going to give someone and the energy I see around them is very difficult, or difficult in the sense of, them not being able to handle something, or somebody directing some negative energy at them and that sort of thing. I'll work with the Archangel Michael in my readings often. I don't see the angel Raphael too often, but when I do, it's always about healing. And funny thing, Raphael means healer of God. So, I really enjoy the fact that that's what I ended up being able to do this lifetime. But angels can be called on anytime. There was a story I read somewhere, and because I used to get videos and books and everything I could on angels during the 80s. And I remember this one story where this woman was on a dark street, and she did fine, but she was scared. So she called in an angel to help her. And somehow her image was picked up on a camera along the way. And she was called into the police department because after she walked through, another woman walked through and was raped by this guy. And they got the guy, and the police asked this guy, why didn't you jump the first woman? She was just as beautiful as the second one. And the guy said, are you kidding? There was this big dude walking with her.
Wow. Wow.
So when you call to the angels for help or comfort or anything like that, or even to help someone else be comforted, they respond. They're here to help us. And, there's nothing that they can't do in a sense, except for they won't do anything harmful or something that's not on that person's path. So I love the angels.
Beautifully and succinctly said. I've called on them with students. I've seen them comforting the souls of students going through a lot. It is a beautiful experience to ask them for protection, to ask them when we're working with others. And man, I love the two of you so much. It's just such a great talk. I knew we could talk for hours and hours.
Yep.
This is the end.
Yeah.
Oh.
The end of the program, the end of the summit.
Yes.
And it was perfect.
Well,
Perfect with you two at the end. Thank you so
Yay.
much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Yes.
very, very much for having us. We really appreciate it.
And for everyone watching, if I'm sure you know the show, but you can turn into their international internet radio show, Living the Miracle with Michael and Raphaelle Tamura on the empowerment channel of voiceofamerica.com. It's a great show. Love it.
Thank you.
It's in Wednesdays at 11 a.m. and also our website is michaeltamura.com.